Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the robing ceremony of the Honorable Derek K. Molter. The judges of the Indiana Court of Appeals and I would like to welcome you here on this grand occasion that's being held here in our beautiful Indiana Supreme Court room, and we'd like to thank Chief Justice Rush and our justices of the Indiana Supreme Court for the use of their fine facilities here today. I'd like to recognize the judges of our court, along with several other special guests that are here today. And I'll begin with the judges that are seated right below me, and they're from right to left. And your honors and other friends and guests that I introduce, if you could just give everybody a little wave so we know who you are, we'd appreciate that. That's kind of the custom at these sort of events. But the Honorable Edward W. Najum, Jr., the Honorable Paul Mathias, the Honorable Patricia A. Riley, the Honorable Elaine B. Brown, the Honorable L. Mark Bailey. I think we're out here in the courtroom now. Thank you, Judge Bailey. The Honorable Margaret G. Robb, the Honorable Robert R. Altice, Jr. Nice wave there, Judge Altice. The Honorable Elizabeth F. Tavitas, the Honorable Leanna K. Weissman, and senior judges of our court, Senior Judge Randall T. Shepard, Senior Judge Ezra H. Friedlander, Senior Judge John G. Baker, and Senior Judge James S. Kirsch. Also with us today is the governor of our great state, the Honorable Eric J. Holcomb, the auditor of our great state, the Honorable Tara Klutz, our Attorney General, the Honorable Theodore Rokita, the Governor's General Counsel, Joseph R. Herons, from our state trial courts, the proud father and the Honorable Daniel J. Molter, Judge of the Newton Superior Court. The Honorable David Serto, Judge of the Marion County Superior Court. The Honorable Kurt M. Eisgruber of the Marion Superior Court, Judge. The Honorable Helen W. Marshall of the Marion Superior Court. The Honorable Melissa Kramer, Magistrate Judge of the Marion Circuit Court, and the Honorable Stanley A. Levine, retired Judge of our Allen Superior Court. From the Northern District of Indiana Federal Courts, the Honorable Teresa L. Springman, who we'll hear from today, Judge of the United States District Court. And from the Southern District of Indiana, District Court Judge, the Honorable James R. Sweeney II, the Honorable Sarah Evans Barker, Senior Judge, and the Honorable Tim A. Baker, Magistrate Judge, once again, all from the United States District Court, Southern District of Indiana. Other federal officials here today is our United States Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana, John E. Childress. From our state legislature, the Honorable Brian Buchanan, State Senator, District 7. From our Indiana House of Representatives, Cherish Pryor, District 94, and also from the Indiana House of Representatives, the Honorable Chris Jeter from District 88. From the Indiana State Bar Association, its President Clayton Miller joins us here today. The Dean of the Indiana University Maurer School of Law, Austin Parrish, joins us. Others here today are Dr. Alexander Choi of the Zionsville Town Council, Amy Carozos, our Indiana State Public Defender, Thomas M. Fisher, Solicitor General of the Indiana Attorney General's Office, Steve Creason, Chief Counsel of Appeals of the Indiana Attorney General's Office, Aaron Kraft, Section Chief Civil Appeals, Indiana Attorney General's Office, Adrian Myring, Executive Director of the Indiana Supreme Court Disciplinary Commission, Justin P. Forkner, Chief Administrative Officer of the Indiana Supreme Court, Holly Wojcik of the Judicial Nominating Commission, Katie Glick of the Judicial Nominating Commission, Rudy Yocum III of the Judicial Nominating Commission, and, of course, the Court of Appeals' own court administrator, Larry L. Morris. And I'd like to thank Larry and his staff. These things just don't happen, as you know. Behind every great event are a lot of great detail people. So thank you, Larry, and the staff of the Indiana Court of Appeals for your work making today such a success. And I'd like to introduce to you now, for the purpose of making remarks in the introduction of the members of her court, our fine Chief Justice and leader, Loretta Rush.
Thank you, Chief Judge Bradford. Judge Molter, my colleagues on the Supreme Court are delighted to have you join us on the appellate bench. I'd like to introduce Justice Stephen David, Justice Mark Massa, Justice Jeffrey Slaughter, and Justice Christopher Goff. Governor Holcomb, well done. Outstanding selection in Derek Molter. To my colleagues on the JNC, I see you back there. Hundreds of hours of work go into each one of those, and I thank you for the time and the consideration that you put in to give 3 outstanding names to the governor each time. Judge Molter, it's been fun watching your talents from up here while you argue down there. I enjoyed getting to question you, going through the process, and I was delighted that you could answer my question about the Indiana Constitution, the primacy doctrine. You'll always remember that, near and dear to me. I enjoyed talking to a lot of your references, just talking to hometown folk in Newton County to find out if that Newton County young man was still there that was going to be joining on the bench. And the mentorship that you provided, the time in your busy schedule with your family to go back and be part of that, it was really impressive. So I felt like I got to know you more in talking to the references and the legion of fans that helped bring you to where you are today. I have to say, we are live streaming this, so hello to all the people that are watching. And 2 of the people that are watching are former Chief Justice Dixon and his wife, Jan. Jan sent me an email to make sure that everybody knew that you were on an early program as a child of a judge for the Judicial Family Institute. And children of the Molters, we will have to put you on that at some time. And very kind comments about your mother also being involved in that. So they send you their best. So, Judge Molter, again, we're delighted to have you join us on the bench. I think you're going to just do an outstanding job, and we look forward to decades and decades of fantastic opinions and decisions from you.
Hear to that. Well, thank you, Chief Justice Rush, for your remarks and all that you do for all of us each and every day. So our next speaker is the governor of our great state, the Honorable Eric J. Holcomb. Governor?
Well, thank you, Chief Judge Bradford and Chief Justice Rush, justices, judges, distinguished guests, one and all. It's always a true honor to join you for a robing ceremony and to have the opportunity to share this familial milestone moment. In this case today, Judge Molter and his family and so many of his friends and folks who helped him get to this very day. And as he dons the robe, so to speak, and all that extra weight that is put upon his shoulders, I think he'd be the first to say that he is stepping into some big shoes, Justice Judge Kirsch's shoes, and who made us all so proud your whole career, your body of work, and really set a high standard for any and all those who would follow. And I can't be more confident in talking to those references and learning myself about Judge Molter that he is indeed and in fact that person who is prepared to fill those shoes and to take the baton and to carry on with the race and to administer justice for our great state and, most importantly, for our people who call Indiana home. And as I recounted, some of you may recall, not too many days ago, when we had this discussion about Judge Molter and his qualifications and his passions, three people and three quotes really jumped out at me during that whole process. One of which said, quote, "one of the preeminent appellate lawyers in our state," about Judge Molter. Another said, "he has improved the administration of justice." And yet a third said, "he is dedicated to improving the lives of others." And you talk about a trifecta. You talk about a ringing endorsement. Those three quotes, again, really jumped out, and every single person we talked to subsequent to that just confirmed that was, in fact, the place that you come from and your goals as you've set out. And it's that praise is deserved. And as not just a legal scholar in your own right, with this almost perfect balance of experience and intellect and insight, these are exactly those qualifications that Hoosiers have come to expect in those who serve on our bench. And every time I've stood before the commission and you all, and I'm going to do it again, I can't help myself, I've just reflected on how much in awe I am of the deep talent we have in the state of Indiana, this deep bench, so to speak, which we draw on and on days like today. It's just a ringing reminder today of just how blessed we really are when we watch that baton handed off from one generation to the next. And I think it's arguably now more important than ever that does occur, that with this great national judicial turnover that we are seeing across our country, that our state, Indiana, is still recognized and respected for our commitment to fairness and to justice and to the rule of law. And that happens here every day, whether citizens see the work that you put into it or not. We see it demonstrated every time I stand before you. Just to underscore this fact, just before coming upstairs, we tallied up the judicial appointments that have been made just on my watch. It's up to 69 now. 69 new judicial officers who have, as in this case, brought your own unique backgrounds and talents and purposes to the courtrooms across our state, from city courts to the Supreme, from small counties to big. And I'm just so, as you mentioned, Chief Justice, so grateful for the Judicial Nominating Commission for, again, all the work that went into this and always does and in moving Judge Molter's name forward as one of the finalists. It's a tough job that I relish. And because it gives me an opportunity to really get to know the people who are steering our state when folks are at their greatest need and in their greatest hour of need. And it gives me an opportunity just personally to get to know not just each of the aspirants, but what motivates them, not just of their accomplishments, and you have a long list, but I also get to know, as you alluded to, Chief Justice, the husband and the father and the committed, community-minded leader that you are. As the Chief Justice mentioned, with your membership on the Newton County Bar Association and with your mentoring, with all that you give still to this very day, to the leadership development in Newton County. I know it's somewhat of a family tradition. It may not be an option in your case, with your father still practicing in Newton County some 30 plus years later, 35 I think it was. And then with your great, great aunt, Agnes, who I will never forget, especially in the way that you have shared the story. Agnes Molter, who, born in the same year when women in the state of Indiana could become attorneys, 1893, I think it was. And then one of my predecessors, going way, way back in the 30s, Governor McNutt, who appointed her as the practicing attorney there in Newton County in that whole district, had to have been the first. And knowing of your deep roots, it's, again, so reassuring that you have not forgotten them. And it's the case with, as I've come to learn, as I look around at the judges who still have Dearborn County and Lake County, and the roots just grow deeper and deeper, and oftentimes when the job is done, they return to grow them even deeper. And so to your children, I don't know if you have much of an option either. We may be seeing you back here one day, if past is any indicator. But today's not about the children, it's about you, Judge Molter. Congratulations on a job well done getting here, and we look very forward and excited for your future as a family. Thank you.
Following the governor's remarks at a ceremony such as today, it's always customary for a speaker to come forth and introduce the new judge to the Court of Appeals in the state of Indiana. And the person that has that honor today is Judge Teresa L. Springman, Senior Judge of the United States District Court, Northern District of Indiana. Judge Springman.
Good afternoon. I am so honored to be a part of this very happy occasion, the robing of a new judge to serve on the Court of Appeals for the state of Indiana. And I'm especially proud that that newly minted judge is a former federal law clerk of mine, going back to 14 years ago. He's come a long way, and it is my pleasure to be able to present him to you of this record in going forward with his robing today. In late 2006, Derek Molter submitted his resume to my chambers for a term law clerk position with the United States District Court for the Northern District of Indiana, Fort Wayne Division. My career law clerk, Macy Doden, pulled his resume from a pile of hundreds that we received for that one-year clerkship. When she mentioned his name to me, Molter, I was taken back and I wondered aloud if he was related to Judge Daniel Molter, who was the Superior Court judge in Newton County. And I had appeared before Senior Judge Molter for several jury trials when I was a trial lawyer with the Spangler, Jennings, Spangler, and Doherty law firm in Northwest Indiana, way back in the 1980s and early 90s. He was a model judge. I was always impressed with his knowledge of the law, his judicial demeanor, and his consideration for the parties, jurors, and lawyers who came before his court. Macy pointed out to me that Eric had excellent grades and impressive honors as a graduate of Indiana University in Bloomington and the Maurer School of Law. Phi Beta Kappa, magna cum laude, Order of the Coit, Law Journal editor, and also a quarterfinalist in the moot court competition. However, being partial to hiring graduates from the University of Notre Dame Law School, given my own experience there, I was very hesitant about bringing Derek up to Fort Wayne for an interview. But Macy was persuasive, and in retrospect, I'm glad she was. When Derek walked into chambers in Fort Wayne for his interview, I did a double take. He was the spitting image of his father. He presented himself well, coming across as confident but humble, personable but respectful, and he obviously did his homework because he made mention of the fact that he played football for 4 years in high school and was a big Irish football fan. So he made points with me, I admit. Now that was all well and good, but it wasn't until the end of the interview that Derek answered one of my stock law clerk interview questions in a most profound and memorable way. I asked him when and why he decided to become a lawyer. He didn't hesitate in his answer. He smiled, nodded his head, and began talking about his childhood. He talked about growing up in the small town of Kentland. He talked about his family, his mother and his father. He talked about days as a youngster when he would walk from home to the courthouse on the square when court was in session. He described how he sat in the back of the courtroom to watch his father preside over cases, jury trials, bench trials, hearings, ceremonies. He watched his father interact with lawyers, witnesses, and people from all walks of life. He watched the human dramas, tragedies, and occasional comedies that play out in that space. And he learned how his father dealt with it all. As mother of 2 young boys at the time, when I listened to Derek talk about what inspired him to become a lawyer, I could envision in my mind's eye him as a boy sitting in the back of that familiar courtroom in Kentland, watching his father on the bench. And I thought in that moment, one day it would be his destiny. Derek worked as a federal law clerk from July of 2007 through July of 2008. He was impressive. He was smart. He had a good, excellent work ethic and was willing to work long hours to get a case project done. He worked well not only with his co-clerks, Macy Doden and John Drake, but also got along with the non-lawyer members in chambers and in the whole courthouse. He did research and writing on a wide variety of criminal and civil cases. He was able to juggle his assignments without getting flustered by the daily changes in the schedule or emergency matters that came into the court. He always kept a positive attitude, and he had a very wry sense of humor, which everyone enjoyed. Now, during his clerkship, Derek worked on 14 jury trials in both the Fort Wayne and Hammond division, along with his co-clerks. One of these trials lasted 11 days, and we conducted it in the Hammond division. It was a complicated IRS refund case that involved millions of dollars, and I inherited it from one of my Hammond colleagues when the first trial that he tried in the case was reversed and remanded by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Because a particular witness wasn't allowed to testify. I distinctly remember, though, the many hours that Derek spent in researching the issues that came up during that complex trial. After a full day in the courtroom, Derek would stay at the courthouse until late, researching evidentiary and procedural issues that arose so as to be able to advise me on rulings for the following day. At the same time, he was drafting and revising the very complicated jury instructions, special interrogatories, and verdict forms so that they could be understood by the jury. He never complained. He always got the work done on time. The trial went smoothly. The jury returned its verdict, and there was no second appeal. The clerkship prepared Derek for his subsequent career achievements. First, as an associate at the prestigious law firm of Arnold and Porter in Washington, D.C., then as a partner at the powerhouse law firm of Ice and Miller here in Indianapolis. And mind you, he did this all while at the same time courting and then marrying Katie and raising a beautiful family with Michael, Samuel, and Mallory. He learned what it takes to successfully navigate through life as a busy top-tier lawyer and litigator, and yet remain a dutiful son, husband, and father. I do not remember the judge or justice that once said, "Law clerks are our professional children. Judges do not have to raise them, but they can take pride in their success in the practice of law." That's so true. I've stayed in contact with all 33 of my law clerks that have worked in my chambers since taking the federal bench 26 years ago. We exchange notes, emails, texts, telephone calls, and occasional visits, especially around the holidays, and I'm very proud of all of them. There is not one bad one in the bunch. They are successful lawyers all and have families of their own. But Derek Molter is the first of my law clerks to become a judge. Over the last 13 years since his clerkship concluded, Derek has stayed in regular contact with me. I've followed his career. I've seen him mature as a lawyer. I have seen him take on the responsibilities of being a leader in the practice, the bar, and the community. He's become a success on his own merits and accomplishments. I knew fate had found him the day he called me at work and said that he was being considered for appointment to the Indiana Court of Appeals by Governor Holcomb. Exciting news, but not surprising. I knew he would become a respected judge someday. He brings to the position the 7 Hoosier virtues with which he was raised: compassion, fairness, faith, honesty, humility, patience, and hard work. He will, I know, serve the citizens of Indiana well because he will serve justice first. Congratulations, Derek. Best wishes to you in this new position. And always remember, go Irish.
Thank you, Judge Springman. If Judge Molter could join his parents, Daniel and Kate Molter, at the lectern with your Bible, and I'd call and reintroduce you, Chief Justice Rush, to administer the oath of office.
Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Derek Molter,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of a judge of the Court of Appeals of Indiana
of a judge of the Court of Appeals of Indiana,
according to the best of my skill and ability,
according to the best of my skill and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
So Judge Molter, we'll have you just stay right there because now it's time for your wife, Katie, your children, Mallory, Samuel, and Michael, to be a part of this wonderful day by assisting you with placing on your robe. Come forward, please. There you go. Yep. Judge Molter, the courtroom is yours, sir.
Thank you. Since we're here, I'd like to talk to you about the Indiana Constitution and the primacy doctrine. Only one person got excited. Governor Holcomb, Chief Justice Rush, Chief Judge Bradford. Thank you for your exceedingly gracious remarks here today and all that you have done to make this selection process and my transition onto the court such a terrific experience for me and such a memorable experience for my family. And I'm also grateful to the Judicial Nominating Commission and the governor's legal team. There's been a lot of talk about how much hard work they put into this process, and that's absolutely true. They put in hundreds of hours, as the Chief Justice mentioned, but it's a lot more than that. They should take great pride in the way they approach their work. I've come to realize a fondness for a parallel in the way they approach their work and the way the Court of Appeals approaches its work. Our Court of Appeals holds oral arguments and asks attorneys exceedingly difficult questions, but always does it in a way that doesn't demean attorneys and allows the attorneys to put their best foot forward while serving their client. And that was my experience with the Judicial Nominating Commission and the governor's team as well. They were always well prepared. They worked hard. They asked exceedingly difficult questions, but they always did it respectfully and with a high level of professionalism. And no doubt it's their reputation for taking that approach that elicits so many extraordinary candidates to apply for every opening, including the two other finalists for this position, Judge Heather Welsh and Judge Mark Dudley, two extraordinary jurists on our Indiana trial bench. Like all the judges that have joined the court before me, I wouldn't be here but for countless people in my personal and professional life who have molded and who have steered me. And of course, that begins with my parents, and I'm so grateful that they are both here today. As you've heard, my father Daniel has served the Indiana judiciary for 35 years and is still going strong. One of the best parts of this process has been the countless number of judges who've come up to me to tell me how much they've enjoyed practicing or serving on the bench alongside of him, and so many lawyers from all over the state who can't wait to come up and share with me anecdotes of trying cases in his courtroom where inevitably he will have either have done something humorous to put the parties at ease or had some keen insight to navigate a particularly thorny issue. Of course, he has created a fair amount of pressure for me here today. After 35 years of his blood, sweat, and tears, people have come to associate the name Judge Molter with a relentless work ethic, fearlessness, humility, and fairness. I hope my service lives up to the name he has created. It is a tribute to him that so many people from Newton County have joined us today to honor him just as much as me. Dad, thank you for all you've done for me, for our family, and for the state of Indiana. And there's my mother, Kate. My colleague, Judge Riley, hails from the same vicinity of the state as I do. She knows many people in the Newton County Bar and many other people who live in Newton County. And after she heard so many of my colleagues ask me so many questions about my dad, she recently chimed in and said, you know, up in Newton County, everyone knows that it's his mother, Kate, who's the smartest in the family. And she's not wrong. It's an observation my dad and I hear a lot, and we never grow tired of it because we know it has made us such better men. My mother's a community pillar in her own right. She recently retired as the beloved vice president of the Kentland Bank, and she's probably known even more for her philanthropy and her curiosity about the world. Some of my high school friends and teammates are here today, and they might recall that I was only ever late to football practice one time, and it was because my mother had taken me to Indianapolis to listen to the Dalai Lama, which is not a common excuse for being late to football practice with the South Newton Rebels. So Mom, while I'm grateful for much, today I thank you for all you've done to instill in me an open and curious mind. It is also wonderful to have with us today her father and my grandfather, William Restall. Governor, you'll be pleased to know he's a fellow Navy man. We both have February birthdays, so we've often celebrated them together, and I'm looking forward to his upcoming 96th birthday. If I had to pick one word to associate with the way he has lived his life, it would be integrity, and I hope I honor him in this new role by living his example. He's also joined here today by his other daughter, my Aunt Linda Connor, her husband Dave, their oldest son Gregory and his wife Kim, and their youngest son Brian and his wife Rebecca. Then there's the family I see every day. I am so glad my children were willing to sacrifice a day of school to be here today. It's amazing how fast they agreed. And as others have alluded to, I'm hoping that we are planting in this gathering the seeds for at least one of them to advance the family legacy and the law. And there are early signs that they just might. My oldest son, Michael, is 10 now, but when he was about 5 years old, he was enamored with fire trucks, as kids that age tend to be. He asked me, Dad, how do the firefighters know that there's a fire and where they're supposed to show up? And so I explained to him, well, usually someone dials 911 on the phone, and an operator answers and calls the firefighters and tells them there's a fire and where they should go. And then I took the lesson one step further. I said, that's how car accidents work too. If someone's in an accident or they see an accident, they call 911, and the operator sends the police or the ambulance to help. And to my surprise, this confused Michael. He looked at me and said, no, if there's a car accident, you're supposed to call Ken Nunn. There are more than a few people ready to give you some business cards when this is over. I now understand why Mr. Nunn buys advertising even during cartoons. My son Samuel, who is 8, is also with us. He loves to create things and even sewed his own Kylo Ren Halloween costume this year. He may be destined for the law because he enjoys speaking truth to power. For example, when I asked him if he likes coming to events like this, he said he does, but he thinks they should be shorter. Before the governor's press conference announcing my selection, I suggested to each of my children they should think of something to say to the governor or to ask him. And Sam's questions to the governor were, how many people will be speaking and for how long? Mallory, my 6-year-old, loves gymnastics and Taylor Swift. She wants to be a pop star, but she is smart and charming, so I think she would be great in front of a jury. But she's still working on learning the different roles of government. After the governor announced my selection, Mallory told everyone who would listen that her dad had been elected president. I explained to her that that wasn't quite right, that I was going to be a judge like Grandpa. And she said, well, at least you can still tell the military what to do. And when I told her that wasn't quite right either, she gave up and didn't understand why I was interested in the job. All 3 kids have a great role model in my wife, Katie. And I realize it's a little weird that I'm not going to look at her or her family when I say the things I'm about to say, because I'll get emotional, the speech will be longer, and Samuel will be disappointed. I wouldn't be here without Katie, and that's not just because she's a wonderful mother to our children and a devoted spouse, although she's certainly both of those things. It's even more so because she's an excellent lawyer who has shared her insight and inspiration with me every step of the way on my professional journey. We met when we were 20 years old, but her path to the law was more difficult and challenging than mine. While I grew up around many lawyers, Katie had never met a lawyer before pursuing a career in the law. She had to begin college in the throes of devastation as her father unexpectedly passed away the second semester of her senior year in high school. She paid her own way through school, sometimes juggling 3 jobs. while maintaining a double major and grades that would lead her to graduating with honors. Despite all the challenges, she excelled at IU with grace that I later learned caused the members of the admissions team at the IU Maurer School of Law to argue with one another over who would get to call her to tell her she had been admitted. And on this Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, I'm especially inspired by her example in choosing how to deploy her tremendous legal talent. Since completing her clerkship with Judges Levine and Heath, and again, we're blessed to have Judge Levine with us here today, she spent her entire career in service of veterans. First as a lawyer for the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, then as a lawyer and board member for the Veterans Legal Advocacy Group, and now representing veterans through Molter Law. She excels in a career where her successes are not marked by pomp and circumstance, but rather the relieved tears of grieving widows and wounded warriors. She's never sought more recognition, and all she's ever wanted to do with her legal degree is help other people. At the governor's press conference announcing my selection, he mentioned a relief trip that I went on to Biloxi, Mississippi to help Hurricane Katrina victims. I'm really proud of that project. That was a project that was conceived of and led by Katie while she was the president of the Public Interest Law Foundation. Her compassion has never dwindled since. She worked for the Children's Defense Fund in law school. She was active in the Children's Playtime Project at homeless shelters in Washington, D.C., and she's been involved in countless charity projects through our church and community here in Indianapolis. Quite simply, Katie is the very best our profession has to offer, and I'm blessed beyond measure to live life beside her. Her family rightfully is so proud of her, and I'm grateful that many of them are here with us today. Her mother, Christine, her brother, Patrick, and his wife, Stacy, their 3 daughters, Tatum, Tess, and Taryn, her sister, Mary Estep, her husband, Chase, and their children, Graham and Macaulay. You heard Graham giving a speech earlier. The first time I met Katie's family, her brothers Robert and Patrick delighted in grilling me, including asking where I saw myself in 10 years. Patrick, I hope I finally lived up to your expectations. This only scratches the surface of the number of family members who've helped shape me, some others that are here today as well, but I can hear Samuel's voice in my head telling me that I need to move this along. So I will just say thank you to all of my family, the family that I was born into and the family that I married into, for the good examples you have set, for your support along the way, and for being here to celebrate the successes and always being there to ease the pain of the setbacks. I'm also joined today by a number of people I've worked with over the years. One constant theme of my career is that I've had the opportunity to learn from judges and lawyers who work hard, who emphasize civility, and who are regarded as among the best at what they do. I've learned much from them, and I hope I'm a better judge for it. And that started with Judge Springman. There could be no better way to begin a legal career than as a law clerk to Judge Springman. She treats her clerks like family, and she models all the attributes of an excellent judge. Our code of judicial conduct says that a judge shall be patient, dignified, and courteous to all with whom the judge deals, and that a judge must require the same of everyone within the judge's control. That precisely describes Judge Springman. She treats everyone with the utmost respect, and the strength of her example inspires everyone around her to do the same. And to this day, I've yet to meet another judge, with the possible exception of my father, who enjoys trials as much as Judge Springman does. Part of the joy of clerking for Judge Springman was also getting to spend time every day with my 2 co-clerks, Macy Doden and John Drake. And it is a tribute to Judge Springman that they're sitting next to her here today, and we've got the band back together in celebration. When I finished my clerkship with Judge Springman, I went to practice at Arnold & Porter in Washington, D.C., and it means a lot to me that all these years later, my colleagues there are still supporting me in a variety of ways, including writing letters to the Judicial Nominating Commission throughout this process. Then a critical pivot point in my life came when Mike Wickmer recruited me to Ice Miller. There is much that I appreciate about my time at Ice Miller, but especially relevant today is that it is a firm which has long supported lawyers using their talents to promote the public interest, whether that is through pro bono work, community activities, or even when that means leaving the firm to accept positions like this. Not every firm would be thrilled with the process of one of its partners publicly applying for a different job. But my colleagues at Ice Miller did everything they could to support me, and I can't thank you all enough. I'm also grateful to my chief collaborator in appellate work at Ice Miller, Jenny Buchheit. She remained thrilled at my selection, even when it dawned on her that she was going to inherit my work and have twice as many oral arguments and briefs coming up as she expected. And I know I speak for Jenny when I say we're both very grateful for the many years of support we received from our assistant, David Young. No doubt the blessing of being surrounded by gracious, hard-working, and talented people continues with my service on the court. All the court's members began going out of their way to ease the challenges of transitioning to the Court of Appeals immediately after my selection. And that generous spirit is a big part of what sets Indiana's judiciary apart. I'm so grateful to you all. And one of the most enjoyable aspects of this job has been the people in my office with whom I have the pleasure of working with every day. My law clerks, Angie Yoon, Kent Zepik, Ronnie Amani, and my assistant, Brees Stin. All four of them joined my office on the recommendation of highly respected members of the bench and bar, and I'm sure glad I listened. Each day they make it easy to come to work and hard to put the work down to leave. And the four of us also enjoy having as our new office neighbor down the hall, my predecessor and now senior judge, Jim Kirsch. Judge Kirsch, your favorite piece of advice is to find what you love to do, and then you won't have to work a day in your life. Part of what makes this job easy to love is getting to do it with you as a colleague. You've been wonderful to me, taking me out to lunch, stopping by for chats, and imparting wisdom whenever the opportunity presents. Indiana is better because of your service, and the measure of my service will be whether it meets the very high standard that you have set. Thank you for all you've done for me, and more importantly, all that you've done for the state of Indiana. I'll conclude with a commitment to you. This is a robing ceremony, and as judges often note, virtually all judges in the United States, whether state or federal, trial or appellate, wear the same simple black robe. It signifies, among other things, that justice is blind, and that we all wear a uniform in service of the same single mission: to ensure access to the courts so that disputes may be resolved consistent with the rule of law and our constitutional traditions. With that in mind, I commit to you that, like the colleagues I join, I'll always remember that this robe does not confer power, but rather conveys a mission. I'm honored by the opportunity to serve that mission and humbled by the understanding that difficult and important work lies ahead. Thank you all for joining me today. My family wishes you a joyful holiday season.
So Judge Molter will now ask you to join your colleagues over here to your right. So Judge Molter, as we conclude today's proceeding, your fellow judges, now we'd like to congratulate you once again. My colleagues and I, now your colleagues, look forward to many years of combined service to the people of this great state. As a court, we strive to serve all people by providing equal justice under the law. We know that you will use your wonderful talents and abilities to help enhance this important work for our fellow Hoosiers. You now become an additional part of the legacy of public service of the Molter family to the people of this great state. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Everyone can be great because everyone can serve." In that same vein, motivational speaker Larry Winget has said, "Learn what you're good at and exploit it in the service to others." Fortunately for all Hoosiers, you've learned that you're good at service through the law. And we know that you will use your gifts and knowledge, both the gifts you have now today and the ones that you will develop over time, for the good of all Hoosiers for many years to come. So, Judge Molter, by all means, serve. And once again, from all of us, your fellow judges, welcome to you and you, the Molter family, especially you Molter kids. You seem like a lot of fun to me, okay? So that concludes today's proceedings, but our celebration continues on out here in the atrium. We have some wonderful refreshments, so please join us for the continued celebration of Derek R. Molter joining our court. Sheriff Dowdle, we're adjourned.
All right.